Welcome, my friends, to the podcast that never ends, where we gather our clan and talk about peace and love in our lives, the difficulties along the journey, and how we rise up. We will experience a little thing I call Kluberty together, find our sweet spot, and planting our seeds to watch them grow in our magic garden. I'm Uncle Dave, and our transformation starts right here. Hey now, and how are you doing? Want to welcome you to the next episode of Peace, Love, and Bring a Bat. Today we have an amazing man who I've met a few times, and you're going to be amazed by hearing of all the things that he's overcome, all the things that he's done and accomplished. And I'd like to welcome my friend Kellen. How you doing, Kellen?
I'm doing great, Dave. First of all, I want to acknowledge you. Doing a podcast and the kind of work you're doing is a labor of love, and I just want to really appreciate the way you choose to show up and how you add good to the world. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Do my best, right? That's what we got to do, is always show up. And that's the first thing that in the morning, once we wake up, we show up, and that's how the day starts.
It is. And that conscious choice of how to show up, we talk about it, but one of the things I love to both teach and to do myself and help people with is to make conscious choices about how we show up. I just had a coaching call this morning with a client, and that's what we were talking about. He was in Mexico on a beach, and he saw this guy, and it turns out that the guy had another job as a tour guide in Yosemite, but during the wintertime, he spent on the beach in Mexico, and he said the guy was just full of life and energy, and somebody said, "Oh, Dave, we need you over here," and he immediately said, "I'm there. I'm nice to be needed," and he ran over there. My client was just talking about the feeling of exuberance and excitement for life. And that's a choice that fellow, whose name happened to be Dave, also made about how he was going to show up. So that sparked a good conversation about choices we have about how we show up.
Yeah, I was talking about that last night with a few people, and it really is, you get to have that choice. So let's start off with you. So because obviously life has not always been a straight line, and we'll get into that a little further. What makes you choose every morning to get up and want to impact over 100 million people?
I'm 67. I'll be 68 in a couple of weeks.
Happy birthday.
Yeah. Just almost 68. And what I have learned, one of the many things over all these decades, is that we actually get to create our lives. And we blame externalities. Somebody did this and the economy, and we tend to blame all these other things. But the truth is we create our life experience. Because that's true, I have, in the last several years, just made a conscious choice because I want to. I choose it. I choose to show up in love, in service, and in a joyful way every day, just because I can, and nobody can make me not do that. What I've discovered from doing that is it helps my business, it helps how I feel, and it helps me be the best service to everyone that I talk to. So I have a long morning ritual that I do every day, not because I have to, not because somebody's checking on me, but because I love the way it allows me to be all day long.
And I love that you said how to be, because we can have a whole bunch of things, and as life will throw lots of challenges at you left and right. And well, you were in the ashes. So we talk a lot about the Phoenix, and you've kind of lifted yourself up. You've made that choice to lift yourself up, and now to be that person, to take that next level, to soar in your own life. And what I guess the real question is, what really made you decide to start soaring again and being the person who you are now?
So when I was 52 years old, from 0 to 52, I lived my entire life according to the story and the script that I was given as a kid. I was raised in a 2-parent home. My parents were very religious. My mom took that to a fanatic level. I had a lot of discipline that today would be felony child abuse. And from that, I learned, the thing I internalized was that I'm not good enough, that I never will be. And I lived in fear and trying to prove myself and so forth. But I also felt like it was all my fault, so I never talked to anybody or got help. And that's a short version of saying, from when I left home at 17 until I was 52 years old, that 35 years, I lived a sort of a roller coaster ride of creating big success and then doing a lot of self-sabotage. by literally losing jobs, wrecking relationships, addictions, being in and out of rehab, etc. So by the time I was 52, I had created 3 huge successful careers and then wrecked them all. I had created 3 marriages and then wrecked those. And I was a personal disaster. So in August of 2007, I was single for the 3rd time. I was making so much money that my $3,000 a week cocaine habit didn't matter. And I had attempted suicide 2 weeks before the events that I'm going to tell you happened. And so in August of 2007, I had a divine intervention, and it didn't make me do anything, but it offered me an invitation to change. And so what happened was I came home on a Friday night. I was ready to go out party for the weekend. I had 4 of my 10 children living with me as a single dad. And as I got ready to go out, I had this urge to turn on the television, which doesn't sound like anything, except I picked up the remote and realized I didn't know how, because I wasn't really a TV watcher. And so I asked one of my kids, my 16-year-old daughter, to punch some buttons and threw the remote at me, dipweed. And it landed on a program I'd never heard of before, but I'd never heard of any of them because I rarely watch television. The name of the program was Intervention, which is a reality TV show about families who stage interventions for busted loved ones. Now, I don't know if it's on anymore or not, but it was. So I watched about 10 minutes of this program, and the protagonist was a high-ranking executive with a cocaine problem. So I watched myself on TV for about 10 minutes, and I said, I'm not watching this crap. So I turned it off and did a few other things and got ready to go out still. And then I felt just compelled to turn the TV back on. Now, this time I knew how. So I turned it on, and that program started over. And no, I didn't have a DVR recording device. And no, it wasn't on the schedule. And no, it can't do that. I understand that, but it did. So I freaked out, and I'm like, holy crap. So I watched the program, and it went badly. The guy yelled at his family, swore he didn't have a problem, stomped out of the intervention where there was counselors and family members and all that stuff. But what it did for me is it freaked me out. And it freaked me out enough that I didn't go out to party. I went to bed. When I went to bed, I went to hell. And what I mean by that is I went somewhere that felt out of body. I was in a large dark room. It looked like a theater. And I could hear voices and see things. And the scenes that were playing out were scenes from my life. And the focus of all of the scenes was on suffering. The suffering that had been inflicted on me with all the abuse as a kid, up through and including suffering that I had inflicted on everybody else as a lousy marriage partner, a lousy dad, a drug addict, a liar, and all the things that I had become. And in my decades of mental illness and not getting help and just disaster. After a long time, the suffering it's so intense that I can't describe it. But anyway, after a really long time, a voice said, "It is enough." I woke up and I was disoriented because the sun was shining in the windows and my windows faced west. I got up and realized that it was 5 o'clock Saturday afternoon. So I'd been somewhere for nearly 18 hours. And I also realized that I'd been invited to change. I had no idea what to do, how to start, who to talk to, or anything. But I knew that I had to do something different. So I got up and threw away $1,000 worth of stuff, cocaine and other drugs I had laying around. And I quit cold turkey that day.
Wow.
Now, that got me sober, but it didn't do anything about how I got there in the first place because of the depression and self-sabotage and all the other behaviors that I had engaged in. The drugs were just how do you numb yourself when you hate yourself?
It's a soothing mechanism, and it doesn't stop the limiting beliefs that you've been trained. Your mind has been trained over the years.
In rehab, they always ask you, well, what's your drug of choice? And I used to say cocaine, although I used all kinds of other stuff. But my real drug of choice was self-loathing. I needed to hate myself. Anyway, so that was the first half. It got me sober. The other half was a little bit later. I went back to work Monday, knowing that I had to change everything, but not knowing what to do. And in the position I had, I used to get free stuff, lots of free stuff, tickets to this. And because I made decisions that affected other companies, sometimes to the tune of billions of dollars. And so there was lots of be nice to Kellen stuff I used to get, right? Not bribes, but just be nice. So box seats to hockey games and tickets to concerts and that expensive bottles of booze, like I needed that, but that kind of stuff. So one of the things I got was a pair of tickets There were $1,000 tickets to see a Yo Ma concert.
Mm.
Now, if you don't know classical music, you don't know who that is, but in the classical world, that's up there. So I thought, wow, but I don't want to waste this other ticket. And I had no interest in a relationship and I had no one to give it to. So I asked in the groups that I managed, who likes classical music? And a lady in one of the groups said, I do. I said, okay, cool. Have I ever given you anything before? And she said, no. I said, okay, fine. See you there. So I gave her the ticket and we met at the venue. The concert was amazing. And you have to know now, as of this date, I'm now 2 weeks stone cold sober. And halfway through the show, which was spectacular, I had this feeling come over me that I recognized from 2 weeks before. And this voice said to me, you need to marry this woman. And I said, you're flipping insane. I said, I've screwed that up 3 times. Some other colossal disasters in between. That is not happening. Later that night, we were backstage because the reason they were $1,000 tickets is it was backstage passes and tickets to the reception and all that stuff. The voice came back and said, and you need to tell her tonight. And I flipped out. I said, okay, there are a bunch of problems here. Number one, I don't know her very well. I don't know her well enough to know, is she even in a relationship? I don't know. And number two, she could have me arrested for harassment and stuff. She works in one of my groups and said, no, we're not doing that. But you don't win those arguments. I did. And it went about like you would have expected. Are you insane? What are you talking about? And she left. But the good news was she didn't have a relationship, which I didn't know. And the second piece of good news was she didn't call the cops or HR or anybody, right? Over the next 2 weeks, she had her own set of experiences. And about 2.5 or 3 weeks after the concert, she resigned from her position, her entire career. I walked away from millions of dollars of contracts. We walked off into the sunset together. And next month, December, we'll celebrate our 16th wedding anniversary.
Wow.
The reason that's a story, but the reason that it matters is she was literally the person, the angel with the soul contract that was sent to help me learn how to be a person, learn how to tell the truth, learn how to have a friend, learn how to be a friend, all the things that I had never learned in my life, and to get the support I needed to get healthy and get healed. So those were 2 pieces over about a 3-week period that happened in 2007 that offered me the invitation, didn't do any of the work for me, but offered me the invitation to change. So that's where I started from. And since that time, I have dedicated my life, first of all, to get myself healed, and then to be a light, a source of love, a coach, an encourager, a catalyst, an author. I've written 19 books now, and all that stuff because of the chance and invitation that I was offered.
And that's one of the pieces I love. I love that you said there's an invitation. We have an invitation every day of our lives. If you don't like something, you can modify it, see if there's modifications that can be done, or you make a complete choice and follow what you think is the right path. And obviously, in terms of a relationship, this seems to be the right path. And I've met your wife. I would agree that you guys have this special connection besides the official upstairs connection, because that's really empowering. And I'd like to talk to you about it. Did you believe that it was an upstairs connection or a universe connection when you first heard it?
I knew there was no way. You got to think about where I was. One of the things I say is if there was ever someone who should have been left at the bottom of the canyon, I was the poster boy, the battlefield. I had 10 children. I had been an addict. I had been a lousy dad. I had cheated on all of my spouses. I was in and out of rehab. I was a liar. I was everything that you don't want, and attempted suicide a couple of times. That was where I started. And even in that place, the divine God offers you an invitation. So what I know from that is I don't care where you've been. I don't care what's happened to you up till now. It is never too late to matter. I didn't even start this journey until I was 52. And the battlefield behind that was a disaster. So I knew that this was a divine invitation. I also knew that I was going to have to do the work. I have asked Joy. Oh, and I didn't say it. The most interesting part about that is her name is Joy, right? So you can't make this stuff up. I've asked her 100 times at least, what on earth possessed you to walk away from your entire career and off into the sunset with a drug addict who was 2 weeks sober? Just think about that for a minute. And she said, I just knew to the core of my soul it was the right thing to do.
Talk about a leap of faith. And so, with your recovery, and congratulations, I'm going to assume that you're still sober. And again, I want to use sober. I don't like when people say clean, because being a former recovery coach, I think you've always been clean. Now, have you used substances? That's a different story, but that doesn't make you dirty. Just because we use substances to get us through, because it really is, as we talked about earlier, the masking of what we have experienced, or the masking of the pain that we're actually in.
I'm sober.
Yeah.
Straight up, stone
Congratulations.
cold. I threw it away that day, and that was it. Cold turkey.
And you were able to do so. What worked this time? Was it the divine intervention that worked this time, or was it the invitation that you said, no, this is not going to be what my story is?
I was always fearful of my worthiness and my worth. I'd made so many mistakes and done so many things wrong, even on purpose and out of selfishness and everything else, that I couldn't imagine that there was any value left in me as a person. I couldn't conceive of that. And this showed me unequivocally that there was, that the opportunity was there. Now, the work of rehab is the work of rehab. You got to go do the work. You got to set in place the boundaries and conditions in order to get sober and stay sober. But what I knew was, if, not if, even since God thought that I was worth this invitation, then I was going to take it. And I was going to take it no matter what. And Joy and I did that too. She knew what a crazy ass thing this was. We knew each other a little bit at work, but not much. And so to walk away from her entire career into the sunset with a drug addict, I walked away from millions of dollars of contracts. I mean, we just started over. And so what we said is, look, we both know, like, we were not starry-eyed in anything. We both know this is crazy. This is absolutely insane. So if we're going to do this, we made a deal with each other. Said, if we're going to do this, is ride or die. This is ride or die, or I'm not doing this. And she said, yes. And it's funny because when that happened, she didn't know. She knew I had to change, but she didn't know when the date was quitting and stuff. And so her view of me was this wildly successful executive that made ridiculous amounts of money. When I quit and resigned, I walked into her office and closed the door and said, I don't know what you think you're getting yourself into, but you need to know I just quit. And so if you want to change your mind, now's the time. And she looked at me and said, I'm in.
Wow.
So
That's
that was just, it was commitment, pure and simple. There was no magic. There was no super pill. There was nothing. It was two people with a full-on bulletproof commitment that said, we're doing this because we knew that it was right. And that's what has sustained us during all these years.
I think that's really what's sustaining you. If I hear that, I heard the word commitment, and that's really the powerful part of being committed to be sober, but being also committed to each other and jumping off that cliff together and figuring it out. And it's definitely worked out well for you because you've had that experience. So even the first 52 years, you've built up some knowledge to get you to those positions. And at times you made the wrong choices, right? We've all made those choices. And now with the knowledge of what are better choices and what feels better, and really taking that invitation.
There's no question about that. People ask me often, so if you could change one thing about your life, and given the mess that it's been, I think they think it's going to be hard to pick. And the answer is really simple. I wouldn't change anything, because if I didn't have the blood on the floor that I have, if I hadn't been through the things that I have, I wouldn't be who I am. I wouldn't have the knowledge. I wouldn't have the certainty. I wouldn't have those things. So I wouldn't change anything. And I trust that there is opportunities. And there's two really important things that have happened for me. In fact, the two most important things in the universe for me since 2007 have been, number one, creating something I call a PTAC, a personal truth and commitment document.
Nice.
It's a document that I don't share with anybody. It's just my contract with God. It's who I am. It's who I say I am. The second thing is a daily ritual, a daily practice to make that set of declarations, that document, the truth of my life on a daily basis. So my morning ritual is 2.5 to 3 hours, and it is focused on intentional preparation according to the deal that I have made. Nobody knows it. Nobody has to agree, no permission. This is just who I've decided to be. And from that place, I have, for me, a bulletproof thing that guides me because I wrote it. This is me saying who I am, not who says I need, nobody's approval, nobody's permission, not the old script of you're supposed to this, that, and the other. This was my contract. And having created that and then a daily process to make it real are the two things that matter most.
I am really glad that you're enjoying the show, and I hope you follow us on all the podcast hosting sites, as well as Facebook, Peace, Love, and Bring a Bat, or you can follow me, Uncle Dave, David Chemetsky, at Facebook, Instagram, Clubhouse, and www.davidchemetsky.com. I also would enjoy for you to contact me if you want to just have some feedback. You need somebody to talk to at peacelovebringabat@gmail.com. Love to hear your feedback. Thanks.
I think that's such an important part of it. It's not only the intentions and things like that, that you did it for yourself. I know when I was in the recovery space, I had people create wellness plans and they go, "What should I do?" I go, "You should listen to yourself." And they would always look at me quizzically because I'm like, I could tell you what to do, but that's not going to get you to do what you need to do. You got to want it. And it's not just about recovery. It's about anything that we want to do in life. And I know that you, among the many things that you teach, that's what you teach is not only what you want, but keeping that agreement to yourself. I love that, the personal truth agreement. It really is. That's whenever you get lost, you just go back to I call it the roadmap, but go back to your roadmap. You don't need me to do that. I can be more than happy to come in and out of your life, but having that roadmap and holding to it, that's really important.
One of the things that, as I help clients who want to, it's a very rigorous process, but help clients who want to create such a document, I'm always reluctant to share my document with them, not because I'm worried about anything that's on there, but because I don't want to create the idea somehow that what I have done is right. It's not anything. Like, it is literally the first time in my life that I said, who the hell am I? How am I going to walk through the world? What I teach and help people understand is the most powerful words in the language are not "I love you" or any of those things, as powerful and beautiful as they are. The most powerful words in the language are "because I said so." Not "because I said so" with some attitude, but "I am this." Ooh, how dare you say that? Who said? Because I said so.
Correct.
I say it, and that's all there is. I need no other agreement, permission, or anything. This is my declaration before myself, before God. This is it. And because I said so is the only reason you need to do or become anything.
That's true. And that's that ownership piece that you got to be who you are. As you and I've had the conversations, why do you wear that green suit? Up for me. And I go, because I do. It makes me feel good. You can laugh about it, make fun of it. I don't really care. It's all about me. And because I said so, that's what I want to wear when I show up for people and do that. I think that's exactly, it's a very confidence building for me. And those are very powerful words.
It gives you permission to make the choice and to take ownership of your life. Like, you do own your life, and you can abdicate ownership your whole life if you want to. And I did for a long time. I was living a script of what I was supposed to do and who I was supposed to be. And ultimately, that will never sustain you when things get difficult. And the reason it won't is because you are not invested. So you can create whatever goals you want, you can adjust them, you can do whatever you want. But at the end of the day, you have both the power and in some sense, the obligation to choose who you want to be on purpose instead of accidentally.
Yeah, and that's so I know we've talked about it, but that's exactly what I've done also, is I had that voice, I call it Grandpa Mike, somebody who's telling me I need to go back to talk. And since then, that's where I've really embraced the Uncle Dave-ness of who I was before. And the green suit came out afterwards, and all those things are really tied to. And I know I've added so much more powerful impact because of that, by showing up more authentically. There are people who go, I don't want to work with that guy. That's fine. But you find so many people who do want to work with you or get you because you're showing up authentic.
If we don't, I couldn't agree more. If we don't show up honestly, then the truth is people don't know who they're dealing with.
Correct.
There's some, if we talk, or if I talk to someone, I tell a story about one of the nicest compliments I ever received. I was speaking at an event. I was there in person, and this is pre-COVID. But a person from the audience came up to me, and they had seen me on video before. And so he came up to me at one of the breaks, and he put his hand in front of his face and then moved it from side to side, looking at the hand and then looking at me. And he said, "Same dude," meaning the person that he'd seen on video all the times that he'd watched YouTube or whatever. And the person he was now seeing in person were precisely aligned. It was the same thing. What is what you get? And that I felt honored, because that's the truth of that transparency you talk about, of that authenticity that you talk about. That's all that matters. And if you can't figure out who you are, then you need to start. It's not too late. I don't care what's happened. I don't care whose script you were living. This day is the day you can start deciding who you are and then living into that truth.
That's really powerful. So how would you, what's the first thing that somebody should realize if they're living somebody else's truth or living their own truth, right? Because there's a lot of people who just go, yeah, I'm good. I know who I am. And they really don't. They know who people have told them who they are.
The way I help people begin to do that is exploring what makes them happy and what makes them unhappy. What is satisfying and dissatisfying about their life? If someone's talking to you or me in the context of the coaching work or transformation work that we do, it's because they're hearing or feeling some voice inside that's exploring that they're not really happy, that there's some friction, that there's something not settling well. And so let's just talk about it, not in a big drama way, but like, what? Do you find yourself wishing your life was different? Do you find yourself wishing your life was different, or do you get up every day just excited about what you have to do? I don't meet very many people who say, I love every minute of my day. I get up stoked about it. I leap into my day and I love it till I go to bed. And then I can't wait to get up tomorrow. I don't meet very many people that feel that. They talk about, I'd like to do this, but I have too many obligations and I have too much of this. And that's completely where to start, because the word obligation carries with it, in my mind, the seeds of resentment. Because if I have an obligation, what that means is I'd really rather be doing something else.
Sure.
So one of the things that I teach people is I have zero obligations. I have lots of commitments, but they're things that I have done on purpose, with full purpose of heart, and I reaffirm my commitment to those every day. And so I live with zero obligations and as many commitments as I choose. And from that place, I never have a feeling if I'd rather be doing something else. I only do what I want to do.
And that's really powerful. Again, it goes back to that ownership that we spoke about earlier, is you get to own and create those boundaries. And that's a really powerful thing also in mindset, to decide that whatever obligations you have, that's it, right? Versus commitments that I have to do. There's no have tos, right? You could do nothing, right? You don't even have to shower, but at some point, the commitment to yourself or your wellness is going to overweigh or outsmell by not. So you get to make choices. We all get to make choices. And I think that's really what we need to look at. And one of the many things is you have 19 books. A lot of the books are about transformation and leadership. How did you start writing a book? Because most people look at a book and go, oh my God, I can't do that.
Well,
Right.
I didn't write any books before my change in 2007. I was an executive and I was a big shot in my little industry in the world, like well known. But I hadn't been an author and I didn't even consider it or think of myself as an author. What has sparked that was realizing, like many people that go through personal transformation, that I have something I really want to share. I really do. And so I thought, I've never written a book before. I wonder how to do that. And so I did some research and I just outlined a book and did it a clumsy, hard way to start with. As the years have gone by, I've created a system. And so I finally wrote a book about writing books called The Story Arc, which is offered as help for people who have that feeling they ought to write a book and don't know where to do it. I just had a networking meeting before this about an hour ago with a lady in England. And she's a former teacher who's now a coach and doing some things. And we were talking, I was listening to her story and she said something about it. I've been told I should write a book. So I picked up a copy of The Story Arc and I showed it to her and I said, this will be the best thing to help you organize the events of your life into a story. And she got all excited. So I started because I just felt the yearning. I need to express these feelings. And then the same old stories came up in me that come up in everybody. I don't know how. Nobody will read it. What difference does it make? Who cares anyway? There's already a million books on this topic. All of those kinds of stories came up for me because I'm not magic. I just decided to do it anyway because it was my voice, it was my story. And here's what I know for me, and I also know it for you, Dave, and for your listeners. Somebody needs to hear your voice. Somebody needs to hear your reassurance. Somebody needs to feel your heart. Someone needs to hear whatever it is that they got to hear from you, not from somebody else.
100%. I agree that. And, I might not have believed that, but that's why that authenticity. And the proof was, even with my first fiction book, I was going through a period and I was like, okay, I'm just going to write a book. And I didn't want to write any more leadership books. I didn't want to write business minded books at that time. And I said, I'm going to write a fiction book. I'm going to challenge myself and put it out there. And then the magic that happened, I didn't do one of those, hey guys, buy my book for a penny and that way I could become an Amazon bestseller. All of a sudden I noticed people were picking it up and friends who did it. But the greatest part about it, it did become an international bestseller by accident because I didn't make the commitment to do that. But also I love that I got to speak to most of the readers. And there's so many readers who had asked me, what are you going to do? Where's this story going to go? And I hadn't even thought of the different paths by taking the invitation to start writing a fiction book, all the different roads that might take me on. And I know you've been on similar journeys like that, where you just start going and you don't know where it's going to lead you.
I have, but I haven't written a fiction book yet. Joy's been after me to do that. And I have had so many books, zillions. I've got 6 more waiting, but they're all nonfiction and they're all designed for out of my personal experience for helping people do one thing or another. But now that she's encouraging me, I'm thinking, okay, maybe I should. So I might follow in your footsteps and write a fiction book. I haven't done that yet, but I'm excited to try.
Yeah, it's fun. I just started writing. I was frustrated, and I'm always in the belief that if you're frustrated, move your energy differently. Don't sit in the ashes. Don't sit in the frustration. What could you do differently? And at that time, I was not sure where I was going to go. And then I started having a story in my head, and then how any sort of book or idea starts burrowing in your head. You got to write it down. And then I started writing, and it really in about a couple of weeks, I was like, I had a story, and then I showed it to somebody. They were like, "Wow, that's really good. Did you think about this?" And I made some modifications. I did some things, and then I got the book. And I put it out there similar to what you mentioned earlier. I didn't care. It was my story, my voice. You like it, great. And I still have some limiting beliefs around it. When people go, I go, yeah, it's not Hemingway, and no, it's not Hemingway. But you want to know, it's a good story. It's worth the investment, and that's really what it is. But the more important, it was the investment in me that I did for myself, and I put myself out there. So I know that there's people who go, oh, that I could do that. Then go do that. Most people could say they could do that, but not many do that. And that's really what sets those people apart from everybody else.
Absolutely. 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 And maybe everybody that says I could, but nobody can read a book that you could have written, or take a program that you could have created, or hear a speech that you never gave. So great that you could. If your heart tells you, if you have a yearning to go do that, then pay attention, because there is an audience, and it will be fun not only for you to say what you have to say and put your voice out, but it will be appreciated by those who want to hear your voice expressed however you choose to express it.
I agree completely. And we've talked a lot about personal development. You also work, not only have you been in the C-suite space, you also work with the C-suite space. What would you talk to people about leadership and leading?
Leadership is changing and has changed dramatically. Like when I was first working, leadership was very command and control. Boss says, do this, you better do it or else, do a good job. A lot of getting in trouble, a lot of dressing down, that sort of thing. And there was a lot of leadership by fear, leadership by exception, which means you only hear if you did bad. There's no positive things. The only time you get called in the office is if you're going to get your butt kicked. That kind of structure. Today, leadership is much more effective. It probably always would have been, but we've migrated to team leadership. We've migrated to lead by example. We've migrated to, and this is all good stuff, be the person who empowers others, create a vision. And a good leader is one that can create a compelling vision and then lead the way into it. So when I was a very successful leader, it was by creating trust in the folks that followed me. They knew that crap didn't flow downhill. If there was a problem, I took responsibility, and then I would come and work out whatever with the teams that I had, instead of saying, I'll go get the culprit and we'll fix this, that whole thing. So recognizing people's gifts and talents, allowing people to be human, and at the same time, setting both by expectation and by example, the kind of performance, accountability, and so forth that you expect from them. If I, as a leader, can't go stand up for my team and take responsibility for whatever we did or didn't do, how can I expect them to do that? If my focus is I'm going to dodge the bullet and sorry it hit you, if that's how I lead, then that's the kind of followers you're going to have. If, on the other hand, you lead acknowledging their ideas and you draw them into the vision and you help them see their place in it, they'll walk off the earth for you. And the reason I know that is because I had teams that would and did, and they would do it because I asked them to, and because they said, yep, it's you, we're going to do this, we're going to do it great. And so it is with love, it is with all the crap we call squishy, it is by example, it is by integrity, it is by honesty, it is by transparency, it is by taking your own personal accountability and modeling and expecting the same from them. And that's a short course. There's lots of individual activities about how to move from a crappy leadership style to a collaborative, powerful leadership style. But that's the core of it. And it simply rests on the foundation that everybody really wants to be recognized. They want to do a good job. They want to be part of a team. They want to be included. And if you provide the framework from that, they'll follow you anywhere.
Yep. I think that's right. If you're an honest leader and you show up and you tell them when things are bad, you tell them something that's bad, they might not like it, but being honest, so they know where you stand. It's not showing up, it's anything else. Authenticity and honesty will always get you exactly where you need to get to go.
Absolutely. So leadership, I love. And here's the other piece about that. Leadership is not an outward focused skill. It is an inward focused skill. So when I work with leaders, my first priority is how you treat yourself, what your own personal leadership is. Every person is a leader. If you don't have a team, fine, you're leading yourself. How do you treat yourself? How do you talk to yourself? How much integrity do you have in the promises you make to yourself? When you get that squared away, creating external leadership ability is actually simple. When you have an internal leadership, not acquiescence, not making excuses, not blaming, but when you have personal leadership about your life, about how you treat yourself and others, and that's who you are. It goes back to the PTAC thing. If you have a declaration in your mind about how a leader ought to be, and if you're that, you can create leadership skills around you without difficulty.
I would agree 100%. Okay. So I know we've used up a lot of your time, and there's two things I'd like to do. One thing I always ask, because I love talking about that there's an R in your heart always. So I always ask my guests, is there a special R word? And I know I'm putting you on the spot, but is there a special R word that you really enjoy to talk about?
One that popped in my mind first was the word resilience. And the reason I use that, there are others that you could use, but resilient. I can promise you, and we can have a conversation with God later about why life was designed this way. But life experience seems to be designed to go through a lot of valleys, run into a lot of walls, have a lot of problems, have a lot of struggles, opportunities for development. Your key characteristic is to develop resilience. You're going to get smacked. You write a book, there are going to be people who hate it. You're going to create a coaching program, and there are going to be people that tell you that you suck. That's going to happen. That can't deter you. Resilience is our ability to take whatever happens, take whatever value there is from it, and then move forward anyway. Why? Because I said so, because that's who I am. And so a choice to develop resilience in yourself, from your support network, from whatever your relationship with the divine, wherever you need it, but a choice to be resilient, all areas will give you a continuing opportunity to grow. It will allow you to get around or under or over any obstacle. Why? Because you won't quit. If you start moving in the direction of a goal, if you never quit, you're going to get there, period. And resilience is one of the key words that allows that to happen.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. It gave me personally a lot of great visuals and thoughts about it. And I talk a lot about resilience. So I really appreciate that. And
I was just going to say thank you. And thank you for your graciousness, for your presence, and for the work that you're doing trying to add good to the world.
Thank you. And thank you as well. I know, is there anything you'd like to leave us with besides the R word? That was my next part. It was the R. And then is there anything that you've given us so many, and that's why I like going down these roads, because there's so many gems. Once you listen to the episode a few times, you'll pick up something new. Is there one specific seed that you'd like to plant in our magic garden?
Yeah, there's absolutely a seed in the magic garden. And did you there's that magic garden imagery in The Monk Who Sold His Ferrari. Do you remember that? Okay, anyway, so there is a seed. And you know what the seed is? It's going to be really simple. It's start right now. Delay is never your friend. Procrastination never created your goal. So I don't care what you've been dreaming about. I don't care how many times you've started a particular thing. This day, the day you hear this show, this is your invitation. This is your divine nudge. This is your opportunity to put a stake in the ground and say, on this day, at this hour, I choose to level up, even a little, and then a little more. If you make a 1% change in your accountability, how many sales calls you make, how many nice words you say to your companion, how many times you choose to forgive, like pick your topic, but there's always going to be a starting day. And for you, that's today.
Thank you so much. That was awesome. I appreciate it so much. And as we're wrapping up this episode, I just want to make sure everybody knows to find peace and love in your life. That's always going to be important. And then when you need to swing a bat, you're hitting your sweet spot. You're making sure you're going to knock it out of the park, or do the best that you can, even if it's just a line drive to the shortstop. Just please make sure you keep your balance in life and swing away.
Well, my friends, today's journey has come to a close. I hope the seeds of peace and love continue to grow for each one of you. Remember, the peace and love surround you that will assist you to rise again. And don't forget to bring a bat for what you believe in. Namaste.